Okay, I think we can get going. We got about an hour and a half together tonight, and I hope to share with you thousands of years of knowledge around medicinal mushrooms. Now, we're going to look at some of the most modern stuff, some of the benefits of each one, different ways that we can extract them, how they can be worked with, and hopefully answer a bunch of questions. It looks like we got folks tuning in from all over, drinking tea. Somebody's having coffee with chaga tincture, a little bit of a Caesar. Nice. Okay, so as before we get going, I'm going to just share with you a little bit about us. I'm Yarrow Willard. I'm the co-founder of Harmonic Arts. This is my little family. We are here on the West Coast in the Comox Valley and really started Harmonic Arts because we couldn't find access to the plant medicine we wanted to work with in clinic. Both my partner and I are clinical herbalists, and we found that based on the NPN regulations and Canada not having as dense of a population, it was really hard to find good quality herbs. And so we started making herbal formulations that are easy to use and high quality for people to work with. Started in a farmer's market, and over the course of the last 16 years, Harmonic Arts has grown into be a national brand that really supports people in finding health through teas, tinctures, mushroom powders, elixirs, syrups, and so much more. We've recently been on a B Corp journey, which is really better sort of businesses that are following ethical practices to be the change we want to see in the world. And that's really exciting for us. I highly recommend you shop with B Corps. They are doing the world a service by supporting with transparency their supply chain, work fair labor practices within that, as well as in their locations, sustainable actions around composting packaging, or just really working to support a better type of planet through business. We're also 1% for the planet, which is something we've been giving back to our local forest, which is where this picture is, just to really support the forest initiatives to help grow more old growth forests and really protect the second growth forests we have. So that's us. That's Harmonic Arts in a nutshell. Really, we're devoted to plants and people. That is our primary kind of way of being in business, and why we're here is to help support people find the best health and really work with our planet's both intact ecosystems and support organic agriculture, but also help deepen that connection to the natural world. Okay, so tonight we're talking about mushrooms, and this is something that's interesting because this topic, functional mushrooms, is sort of hype and new right now, but this is information that has been being shared since time out of memory. Literally over 4,000 years across the planet, mushrooms have been used as medicine. Some as psychoactive, like in Central America, and also in North, when you think of the flying reindeer shaman and the Amanita muscaria mushroom and all of that kind of sort of Santa Claus mythos. But also if you go into ancient Greek and Viking and European traditions, you'll find lots of statues towards the mushrooms and kind of homage to that, all the way down into South America, Central America, everywhere on the planet. But particularly Asia has done a really good job of writing down and sharing a lot of information over the last few thousand years around working with functional mushrooms like reishi and lion's mane and turkey tail. And these have sort of become the staples of what is a functional mushroom. And some of the ways we can start to look at them has been unpacked through a lot of science that has come out over the years based on all this ancient wisdom and all this ancient teaching around mushrooms. We now see that this is becoming one of the #1 places where people are looking for finding optimal health through kind of and I'll go into it a bit, but essentially putting our bodies through a college education and how to show up on planet Earth. Many of the functional mushrooms have figured out strategies to deal with pathogens on this planet, and they support our health in many ways, as well as some of the psychoactive mushrooms have shown different cultures enlightenment and connection to the spiritual kind of conduits, but also more emotional empathy and leadership and courage and all kinds of things over the years. So it goes without saying that there's a lot of power in the fungal, I guess, wood wide web, as we like to call, and we're just really starting to unpack its healing benefits in the modern age. One of the biggest things that we're going to talk about a bit tonight is how degenerative chronic disease, aka the slow death in our society, can often be supported by working with functional mushrooms in that sense, things that are kind of giving that education to the immune system, but also modulating and supporting the body through stress, through cancer, through all these things. So we'll touch in on that in a bit. But before we kind of go in, these are the top 5 mushrooms. I'll kind of move my head over to the side so you can see that we're going to look at today. We're going to look at reishi, lion's mane, chaga, turkey tail, and cordyceps. Now, all of these mushrooms have kind of a functional immunomodulating property, but each one has a little bit of a difference and nuance. So we'll talk about each one as we go, but just sort of high level, we've got these kind of grounded adaptogenic qualities of reishi, memory from lion's mane, chaga is more antioxidant, turkey tail is more deep immune, and cordyceps gives us more stamina and energy beyond the tumor fighting and the immunomodulating properties. So we'll go into each of those, talk about where we might want to look for, what kind of sourcing is ideal. This is one of the challenges with medicinal mushrooms, is that we're seeing a lot of different mushroom products, not all of them having active constituents or the types of active constituents that have been studied and looked at in lab tests and clinical trials. Okay, so before we get going too far, I want to kind of give you a little fun thing. This is something our social media team put together, and I really liked it, so I wanted to kind of put it in the slideshow. And it's, which mushroom personality are you? Are you a dynamic, protective, adventurous chaga type person? Maybe you're a trusting foodie that's resilient and just a trusting turkey tail type person. Always got things, always got people's back. Or maybe you're a creative, gray-haired, optimistic lion's mane person. Or maybe you're an athletic, highly driven, or high energy driven cordyceps person. Or you might have a little more of that spiritual, big-hearted groundedness and be a reishi person. So type in the chat, what kind of person do you think you are? Maybe you're a couple, maybe you're a combination, maybe you're all 5. But yeah, and think about it. Which mushroom personality am I? So I'll put it back to one more to that slide. Yeah. Okay. Ponder that for a minute. Put it in the chat. Now, as we go along, I really wanted to just start by giving an understanding of what is a mushroom. Like, what is this life cycle of the mushroom? Very simply, the underground part over here is the mycelium, and that is basically, this is the underground tree. And what it is sort of like, if you can imagine, the fruit of the mushroom is more like the apple. I think my mouse is showing up there. And this fruit is where we see much more of the high active compounds. So sort of like an apple has pectin and all these things, we're going to see the fruit having more of that. I'm just going to see if I can switch myself aside so you can see. Yeah, you can see that's better. So now you can see the picture. In the wild, the underground part, we never get a chance to eat or connect with or work with. We can only ever pick the fruit. Many mushrooms grow on trees, but they have the same quality of a mycelium in the tree and in the ground. And then the fruit comes out as the reproductive aspects. Because they're reproductive aspects, all the spores are produced in the fruit. This is where a lot of the more interesting chemistry comes up in a mushroom. More of the antioxidant compounds, more of the hormonal compounds, more of the protective compounds. In the mycelium underground, we see a lot more of these, beta-glucans and immunomodulator compounds as well, but maybe not quite as wide of a diversity. So anyway, that's the basics of a mushroom. And I'm just going to switch back, and we're going to go to the next slide. So in the marketplace, what we're seeing right now is a lot of nuance between fruiting bodies and mycelium. And I'm bringing this up really because Harmonic Arts sells fruiting bodies, and there's a lot of companies that sell a mycelium product. There's nothing wrong with the mycelium product. It's just that we found over a period of time in tasting the mushrooms, in understanding the chemistry, in looking at the scientific literature, that really the fruiting body is where a lot of the active compounds are, the more bioactive, and also the anecdotal history for 4,000 years, let alone that, we're seeing that studies have been done on this part much more. And so both are good. There's new studies being done. I've been sent a few that are great around looking at mycelium and understanding that there is other bioactive compounds in the mycelium. It's just that they haven't been studied, and they're not as wide of a diversity. So much more of the polysaccharides in mycelium, in some cases higher percentages, but in almost all cases lower variety. Whereas in the fruiting bodies, what we really see is a much higher concentration of active compounds. So when we say reishi might be grounding, a lot of that has to do with its terpene profile. When we say that chaga is antioxidant, well, there's a ton of polyphenols in there, and that's all in the fruiting bodies. When we say that cordyceps adds stamina, well, a lot of that's the cordycepine and adenosine that are only found in fruiting bodies that are grown on the right mycelium base. So a lot to do with what is active in a mushroom has to do with the substrate that it's grown on. So what is it grown on? That's how it converts and produces chemistry. And how is it allowed to go to full fruit in order for that chemistry to mature and come out, I guess, post-digested as mushroom hormones and mushroom spores and mushroom gills and mushroom caps. That's where we start to see all those bioactives. Okay, so that's why it kind of lead us down this line of sourcing. I really, really, really wanted to work with mushrooms grown in North America. In fact, my backyard would be most ideal, or here in the forest. But from an ethical impact, it's not really possible to do a lot of sustainable wild foraging of a lot of the really best quality functional mushrooms because they only grow in super intact ecosystems on their natural sources. And what we find is that there just aren't enough of those to sustainably harvest other than for your own family, maybe make some chaga tea or add some polypores to soup and bone broth and those kind of ways. So in order to really work with bioactive chemistry, we need to find the best quality. And what we found is that everyone in North America is growing it on mycelium, and they're not, or mostly grain spawn. And it's really, you have to go back to where mushrooms became really famous, which was Asia. And we see a lot of log grown reishi. So we work with like a Danwood log grown reishi, a lot more sawdust, fallen tree harvested mushrooms than we see here in North America. And just as an understanding, when I went to China, I recognized that 90% of the mushroom industry is in Asia. We have a very small amount that's here in North America. And so there they have every different variety. They've been basically working with functional mushrooms in coffees and in supplements and in face creams and shampoos for a long time. So there's a lot of variety. And that means you can find kind of the highest cultivar. And that's sort of what we were looking for, is what we really wanted to work with for Harmonic Arts and to offer to the world is a Danwood or basswood log grown reishi. So you see this picture of me and this farmer. This is about 7 hours commute, 5 hours by a car and 2 hours by train to get up into the Nine Dragon Mountains, where they bury these logs underground and grow this reishi. Very, very special reishi in a very unpolluted and beautiful kind of picturesque mountain range way in the backlands of China. So this is where we source our reishi. And I'm just going to share with you a little bit. This is from that farm. That's what it kind of looked like.
You deserve the...
and I'm going to just pass that forward. And this is underneath in the hills, I guess, under the shade cloth. When we went there for this time, it was during the spore season. So they harvest all the spores, put these mini tents up just to harvest spores. And the shade cloth is to mirror a forest. And what we found was really high quality reishi, again, grown on logs, so having that high terpene profile. And that's what we work with in our product. That's then produced into a spray dried powder that is vacuum dehydrated into a really easy to use format that's a 12-to-1 extract. So I'll talk about that a bit more, but I just wanted to kind of give you some ideas of where we find some of these. Chaga, the chaga that we work with at Harmonic Arts is really a wild foraged Siberian chaga, but it's not really wild foraged. It's kind of wild cultivated. What they do is they make wounds in some of the old trees throughout a different part and regrow back the chaga and continue to grow out chaga in a certified organic forest. That's then lab tested, of course, to make sure that there's no chemistry. We did pick up one time a little bit of DEET that came in from people spraying themselves for mosquitoes when harvesting. It was very, very small amounts, and that's actually been resolved, that harvesters are no longer using harsh sprays for mosquito protectant. But really, essentially, this is a mushroom that needs to be cultivated on a birch tree in order to have the betulinic acid and the high concentration of active chemistry. So this one concentrates out chemistry from the birch. And one of the neat things is it also helps the birch live longer. So trees with chaga in them live longer than those without. Birch has a lot of other predator fungus like birch polypore and tinderconch that will easily eat birch trees. So chaga helps as almost an antifungal mushroom to protect the birch, so it can live longer and be more antioxidant and stronger and just have a better life in some ways. So it's kind of interesting, the symbiosis of chaga. Cheers, chaga. And I just really love it. It's a great tea. I'm here at Harmonic Arts, and we've got some on tap, basically. One of our staff makes chaga tea every day. Okay, so when I was over there, we also went to an area called Gutan, which is very specifically a few farms where our lion's mane is grown. And this is really neat to kind of go check out and tune in with the lion's mane farmers. This area, Gutan, really is a beautiful part of China that basically means ancient mushroom farm. And there's quite a thriving market around there, and a lot of mushroom growers, but also being picky and choosing the ones that are in the best locations so they can have certified organic farms was what we've kind of looked at and really sought out. Our turkey tail also is the other mushroom that one of the other mushrooms we're gonna talk about. This one is a log-grown turkey tail from the northern part of China that we work with that, again, is along the Siberian border, and I think some of Mongolia, but really where there's enough trees to grow out, and again, another wild cultivated turkey tail forest that's kind of been cultivated in a specific way to enhance turkey tail growth. All right. Lastly, I wanted to show you where our mushrooms are sourced from in one more, which is our cordyceps. This is a cordyceps that we went to go visit and connect with. This is the only cordyceps we work with. It's called Cordyceps militaris, and we only work with this one farm because they grow out a really high cordycepine cordyceps, which really, and adenosine. This farm works with the University of Hangzhou and has really developed the right type of substrate to encourage higher growth. And this is a bit of a coconut fiber, soy, rice substrate, a bunch of kind of grains and some other nutrition and some protein in there to enhance it and make it very similar to the exoskeleton of an insect. Therefore, the cordyceps, even though it's vegetarian, it grows out in these high active compounds. I would say cordyceps is our most expensive ingredient because really the substrate is quite expensive to grow this, but we know it has more active compounds than any of the other cordyceps we see. A lot of them are grown on wheat, and therefore you get big, plump cordyceps, lots of volume, but low active chemistry. Much better to have smaller volume, smaller mushrooms, and more active chemistry. That's what we're going for anyway, and that's why you would maybe want to choose Harmonic Arts when it comes to working with cordyceps, because we've done this research, we've visited the university, and we really understand, after them spending millions of dollars researching different substrates to grow the best quality, that's the only one we want now. Okay, so I've got a little video here, and I'm going to just kind of play it, and let's see. I'm going to try and give you a little tour of our mushroom extraction and testing facility. It's just like 5, maybe 20 seconds. All right. Basically, this is our mushroom process recap. This is what this video is from. And we get the raw cordyceps in. That is then ground up, or whatever mushroom it is ground up and put through the top of basically a chamber that goes down into these decoction pots. These decoction pots are where the concentrated polysaccharides come out, and then into these alcohol kind of extraction tanks. That's then ported over to what's called a vacuum dehydrator tank, and this evaporates it down till it's like a puck. It then goes through a spray dryer and turns into a powder. But this powder isn't really a powder. It's more like a juice powder of a tincture and a decoction put together. That's then lab tested and gone through 3 different layers of quality control, from a microbial testing and so much more. And there's a big gorilla looking guy talking about mushrooms. All right. So that's a bit about our quality control. Something I wanted to just kind of tune into is that it really matters, especially because we've chosen to source really what we think are the best quality mushrooms on the planet. But because they are from China, or at least the manufacturing is done there, a lot of people in North America are really fearful of that. And so one of the big things we wanted to kind of share with people is like, look, there is really good quality, and it can be lab tested and proven if you go through the process. And that's what we've kind of done, testing for pathogens, testing for allergens, and then testing for pesticide residues. Even though all of the places that our mushrooms are grown are certified organic, they're tested for the pesticide residues and also heavy metals, because people are also concerned with groundwater and heavy metals in different parts of the world where luckily where we get our mushrooms are from really pristine areas. So it's not like the eastern seaboard where you see a lot of the soil, a lot of vegetables coming from there have heavy metals in them if they're grown in the wrong parts. Although I will say I saw way more food there than anywhere I've ever seen in North America. Now they've been past yeah. So they're growing a middle class in that sense. Anyway, potency is another piece. We test for all our active compounds from cordycepine to adenosine to beta-glucans. We work with strictly fruiting bodies because we see that there is a lot of active chemistry there. Although I've seen some convincing evidence around some of the lion's mane mycelium studies that are saying, hey, there is some good benefit to the mycelium here. I haven't seen anything convincing around reishi or chaga or cordyceps or turkey tail, but there is some headway being around lion's mane and working with not just the fruiting body, but also mycelium having some benefits, although not the same active chemistry, but still some of the studies are being done. And I look forward to seeing more around that, because I think it's a lot easier for people to grow mycelium than it is to grow fruiting body. Okay. Our mushrooms are extracted as a 12-to-1, a 9-to-1, an 8-to-1, or a 7-to-1, depending on which one you get. This is really more like 12 pounds of reishi to make 1 pound of our powder. So even though it looks like a powder, it's not just ground up mushrooms, it's a concentrate that has been put through water, evaporated off, and turned into like an instant juice powder, but of a tincture or a water extract. The reason that it's 7-to-1 or 8-to-1 is just about active compounds. We're looking to measure really more to active compounds than to the concentration, but that's kind of what we have. And that's how it works. Our 5-blend has equal parts. A little bit about our labels. We've kind of changed this around, and I want to just sort of share this for people who are maybe taking capsules, because now that we offer mushroom capsules, it's the same exact kind of dosage on the bottle for capsules or powder. It's just really a different format for people who want a different kind. And you'll see the labels saying something like, in the case of the reishi, we're looking at 375 milligrams per day. That's in 2 capsules. That's the crude equivalency if we were to look at the 12-to-1 ratio of, looking at this, we're going to see of 4,500 milligrams or 4.5 grams of reishi. That's a lot of reishi still. So what I've found, and why we wanted to make sure we had these strong enough dosages, is that most of the studies done on reishi, as an example, are 3 to 6 grams of mushroom used in the study, not half a gram of mushroom. So by having a 12-to-1 capsule or 12-to-1 mushroom powder, we can actually make a half a gram capsule equivalent to 4.5 grams. So to me, that's a little less than half a gram capsule, but you get the idea. Really to make it more potent and be able to offer you a therapeutic viable product for something that's also cost effective, and you can take a smaller dose to really get that viable amount. So let's explore a bit about mushrooms. And also if you have any questions as we go through the mushrooms, things you might want to learn about or know about or ask questions about each one, let me know. But first, I just want to we've got through, so recap here. Mushrooms are some of the highest, most functional medicines that really support our immune system, that give us a lot of that edge. In the case of reishi, more of that grounding. With each one, I'll talk about each one, but we want to make sure that they're high quality and we're getting them that are lab tested and really also in the easiest format to work with. But this mushroom in particular is probably my favorite mushroom on the planet, even though I shouldn't really have a favorite. I'm a little biased. Reishi is that medicinal mushroom of higher spiritual potency. A lot of the kind of literature talks about, mushroom of immortality, or to protect you from your own brain, or spiritual enlightenment. I've heard it called, Spiritual vegetable meat. I thought that was really kind of vegetable meat context. And it's sort of this folklore and fables around reishi are all through Asia. Lots of stories, lots of old ancient myths incorporating this mushroom. And it was considered to be one of those herbs in the elixir of long life, and really a really potent piece of that. This has to do with the fact that it supports our cardiovascular health in a big way. It also is really anti-inflammatory and does a good job of helping us deal with stress and really get a better restful sleep, and just calm down anxiety and tension in the body, and really just in general ground us. This in itself means we have less oxidative damage, we're a little more connected, a little less stressed, better breathing, better cardiovascular. We're going to live longer. Some of the terpenes in there also support our liver and detoxification. One of the old myths was around the emperor of China was trying to find this elixir of immortality, and he heard it was this soma, as we say, which was mercury and something, and he didn't know what that something was. It turned out it was reishi, and the idea is that actually reishi can help pull out some of that mercury toxicity when taking microdoses of mercury, which I don't think is a very good idea anyway. But some of the old myths around that, and of course the emperor died, unfortunately, because he drank mercury poisoning. Anyway, that's not what we're here for. Let's learn a little more about reishi. This one, because it works on the cardiovascular health, it also starts to help the heart pump stronger and slow down if the heart is pumping too fast. It has a slightly lowering to blood pressure quality, which means that if people are already on diuretics and trying to lower their blood pressure, they want to monitor that, because reishi will naturally lower the blood pressure. And if they're artificially lowering it with diuretics, then they might want to just kind of correct that medicine and ask their doctor to titrate down the dose if they're starting to see that now they're getting too low of blood pressure, right? So just kind of watch that with reishi. But for most of us, even if you had high blood pressure, it wouldn't bring you to low blood pressure. It would bring you to a balanced blood pressure. That's the kind of modulatory effect, is that it's not going to overly compensate and lower the blood pressure too much. But with that, it also kind of doesn't just calm down the heart, it helps to calm down the lungs as well. And so we get a lot of support for even just like deep lung breathing. So a bit more support with asthma and anxiety, where there's like shallow breathing. This can be a great supportive mushroom for that. And as an adaptogen, we see that it's helping the lungs, but also the heart. And all of that ends up supporting just the ability to deal with stress and just really help the body handle better stress load. We see that also one of the best things about reishi is its grounding quality that helps move us out of circular wind, I would say, or thinking too much. So a lot of people who get anxiety or insomnia find that reishi really supports their brain in not overthinking, moving out of that monkey mind. So if you find yourself one of these people who are obsessing over things or you can't turn off at night, reishi might be a good one to start to support you during the evenings. It's also got some quercetin in it and other antihistamines and a lot of anti-inflammatories that are going to support the gut health, but also just in general inflammative damage in the body. Yeah, so that's a little bit about reishi. In the end, I think this mushroom has a lot of benefits for those of us who live in the modern world and are going through and have gone through things like not like COVID, yes, as a post-COVID thing. This would be a great one to support the cardiovascular health and the immune system afterward. Not maybe during, right in the throes of it, but right afterwards to be a really good way to help support the body, and also beforehand to make sure we're not getting sick. If we're getting any kind of illness, colds, flus, infections, viral loads like COVID, we want to work with those symptomatically in the moment, the way that the symptoms are coming up. But when we want to fortify our castle or deal with the aftermath of a disease, this is where mushrooms like reishi really come in and can support us. So yeah, probably one of my favorites. I'd put it in the water supply of anywhere I went if I could. If I had an abundant amount of reishi, I think everybody should take this mushroom, especially if you live in the modern world, which 90% of us do. We have these phones, we have these screens, we have too many things going on. It's so easy to get distracted and to be overwhelmed. And reishi is perfect for that kind of thing. So next up, Let's look at chaga. Chaga is the one I'm having a drink of right now. And this one, this has been used in Russia and Siberian medicine for a long time, but also goes all the way into the Northlands. And when I was in Finland, they were very clear that chaga was their medicine, not the Russians. But of course, they had some conflict at one time. And all of those Scandinavian countries that have birch, there's some folklore history of working with chaga. I'm holding my cup up like cheers, but the reality is it tastes great and it has these immune supportive antioxidant qualities. So it's gonna be good. Plus, it helps stabilize blood sugars and blood pressure. So in some ways, for those in like feast and famine time, drinking chaga tea in the winter when you're in famine season is a perfect medicine, probably one of the better ones to work with. And so I'm a fan of it. We like to start drinking chaga in the fall when the season comes. We can either do that with our chaga powder. So this powder right here, I can take a little quarter teaspoon out, put it in a cup, add some water, and I have instant chaga tea. That's probably the easiest way to make chaga tea. You can also open up the capsules and literally make chaga tea with it. And it's quite concentrated. Or you can do a decoction with the big chunks of chaga like I have up here. And you can start to break those into a smaller teacut and then lightly simmer that and rebrew that 4 to 5 to 6 times. You can definitely get, up to 6 brews out of chaga. I really love this though, also because I have a bit of I don't do a keto diet, but I don't eat a lot of bread. I keep pretty lean on like any kind of carbs, but I also don't, I fast. So I do intermittent fasting, which is more haphazard. It's not like I have this very strict plan. It's more that I allow myself not to eat in the morning for a number of hours. And I find drinking a chaga tea or chaga elixir of some form is a great way to kind of stabilize my blood sugars. Or in the mid-afternoons, if I'm feeling a little bit low blood sugar, a cup of chaga tea is just a great pick-me-up. And it's a really good way to support the body. So that's one of the things I like about the powders. They're really easy to make into a straight-up tea in an instant. All right, so let's talk about lion's mane for a second. Again, chaga being that anti-inflammatory, really tasty, just amazing mushroom that has a lot of history in Europe. Lion's mane has got a lot of history in Asia, but not as a functional mushroom, not as a memory support for mental clarity, which is what we know of it now. Lion's mane has been a food in Asia for thousands of years. It's been part of something that's kind of loosely translates into happy tummy soup, which is really all about helping the digestive system when there's anxiety in the belly and when there's a knot in the digestion to help deal with that anxiety and support just kind of a happy digestive system, but also work with nervous tummy and work with all those kinds of things. That's what it was originally known for. And then lion's mane started to get studied, and it was found out that it had nerve growth factors, which stimulate nerve growths, and so regrow nerve cells. And so in the digestive tract, part of how it was working was as this happy belly mushroom was supporting the nervous enteric layer of the digestion, and just to help calm down anxiety and depression. And I think the happy part was just really one of the big parts that lion's mane offered. As it got figured out that it had these nerve growth factors in it, it started to get studied with neurodegenerative diseases, mostly in Asia, but then over here in North America, a little bit more in Europe around Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis and neurodegenerative stuff. And they found out that with the right dosage of lion's mane, like 6 grams or so, you start to see real impact on supporting regenerating nerve growth after nerve damage. This then started to get studied even more, a lot of hype, people are excited, got its way into Forbes magazine and all this like high level biohacking stuff, and now into like psychedelic microdosing. And before you know it, lion's mane has blown up as the like #1 mushroom for supporting mental clarity and memory and all of this kind of brain stuff, focus. I think it's more that we had a problem we were really looking for a solution for, which is our lack of focus and memory and mental clarity in the modern age. And lion's mane fit the bill, although I still would say this mushroom is far better for working with anxiety, depression, mood support, and just making us feel better and more connected and with better memory than it is for having that kind of biohack of super focus, super clarity. Some people get that, but really, to me, I think lion's mane's amazing, but I also think that it's been a little bit over touted in the last couple of years, and all the studies are showing you need like 4 to 6 grams, like good amounts of lion's mane to really see some of those benefits. So this is one that I would consider if someone's looking at working with, to a little bit hero dose or macro dose. Take a double what it says on the product. You can definitely consume more safely, so that's not a problem. But yeah, to really have those neuroregenerative effects, lion's mane should be dosed heavily. And yeah, it's pretty neat that it does contain all these nerve growth factors in it and really can regenerate our brain. It's been now studied for Alzheimer's and dementia, but also spinal cord injuries, nerve pain from dentists and teeth, and all kinds of other burns and nerve pain that way. Yeah, so it's starting to get more around that. Although the main thing, again, just to kind of reiterate, is look to things like depression and anxiety and like winter blues. That's where lion's mane is great. Or if you're a student and you need to study, yeah, or if you are starting to get a little bit of dementia, this might be the right one for you. Yeah, next mushroom is turkey tail. Love this guy. This one is happy hiker's mushroom, I like to call it. And it's everywhere in certain parts of the world. I was just in Toronto doing a trade show there. The CHFA is our big Canadian Health Food Association show where a lot of the brands in Canada go to present what they're doing. And, I'm in Toronto and it's like big city. We got a little bit out of town into Oakville and I look, topo map on Google and I'm like, ooh, River Valley. I'm going to search for mushrooms. And within 20 minutes, I found the most beautiful patch of turkey tail right there, like in the heart of Ontario, and a little bit of reishi growing in that river valley too, which was just awesome to see Ganodermas and turkey tails and just all my old friends that are medicinals just growing so close to the biggest city in Canada. I was like, no problem. There's a lot of great medicine still here in the wild. So yeah, this one has been studied heavily, and I think it's the number 2 studied mushroom on the planet, reishi being number 1. This one is much more about working as an immunomodulator and anti-cancer, anti-tumor protective. Some of the supplements made out of it are known as like polysaccharide peptine or polysaccharide crestine. That's PSK or PSP. These are cancer supportive pharmaceuticals that are made out of turkey tail that are used in conjunction with chemotherapy in Asia. In Japan, these turkey tail extracts are covered under your governmental health plan for working with cancer. So they're that well recognized in some parts of the world. Here in North America, a lot of anecdotal evidence, a lot of people saying turkey tail helped with cancer, helped with this type. It's not going to help everyone, or it's not a magic bullet, I'll say. It definitely has shown to support better recovery from chemotherapy and shown to support people in general with helping with tumor systems and cell metastasis and cells going rogue and creating mini cancers or mini tumors. But we don't see that as the end of where turkey tail works. I think this is one of the most hardworking mushrooms. It's in all these ecosystems, growing on all these different types of trees. And so turkey tail really, to me, is one of those, like that hardworking mushroom kind of is similar to its capacity to support the liver, which are a hardworking organ. Turkey tail is shown to help the liver detoxify better and to really just be supportive for creating better liver function. Hence why we put it in our liver blend, just to kind of support that way. But yeah, it also can work with probiotic and prebiotic. It's not as much probiotic, sorry, I mean more prebiotic, meaning food for probiotics, creating the right ecosystem for gut health and anti-inflammatory effect. That is a big part of how a lot of these mushrooms work, actually, is that they support gut health by really being a prebiotic, which then in turn supports immune health. So how it works is create the right ecosystem, grow out the right microbes in your gut, and you will produce the right fruit, aka your body cells will regenerate and be much healthier and your immune system will be stronger. So a lot of that initial immune protection comes from our gut enteric lining, and our microbes. And these mushrooms, but particularly turkey tail, reishi, and chaga have a really good ability to do this too, as do lion's mane and cordyceps. But really, this is the one that has the most kind of gut health prebiotic function that supports our immune system. Okay, so last mushroom we're going to talk about in a little bit of depth here is cordyceps. I want to just give some thought to this mushroom is still just being unpacked. There's so much to the chemistry of cordyceps that we're still just learning. I think this, in the next 10 years, is going to become much more famous than it already is, because it really got its early rise as a mushroom to really look at through the, I think it was the Chinese Olympic team breaking a bunch of world records. And everybody thought they were like on drugs or something, because they just totally broke all these records. And just from a body perspective, they were not the longest, fastest people. But what happened was their cardiovascular system was functioning at high peak performance. Their adrenals were firing with optimal capacity. And so their endurance and stamina and ability to muster up and support energy and recovery was just like top of the game. So everyone thought steroids for sure, but no, it turns out cordyceps was the missing secret ingredient that supported the Chinese Olympic team. And that was in the 80s. This then blew up, and now all through North America and Asia, lots of athletes use this mushroom. We have all kinds of CFL football players in Canada and NHL players that use cordyceps. But we also have, like, I've got a number of I'll say late night rave DJ friends that are now in their 40s that have come to me and are like, what can we do? And cordyceps is the perfect thing to help them when they no longer do those party things and they have to stay up till 4 in the morning. Cordyceps is the perfect mushroom for them. People who work these kind of late shifts too, to increase energy and stamina and deal with recovery from being on the opposite side of the light cycle in one's life. This could be a great mushroom. But because of all those qualities, that adrenal support, we also see that it has this libido enhancing quality, which means increasing fertility, both in sperm count of men and in kind of tone of the uterus for women, and really supporting libido and making people a little more frisky, we'll say. It's not going to turn but it's not like a true aphrodisiac, but it is true that when you go back to the stories of the original yak herders who found cordyceps, they would find that the yaks would eat this mushroom and then get all frisky and start to create little yak babies. So they kind of chalked it up to this must be a fertility and libido enhancing mushroom. And it has shown to definitely support people's energy and drive. Maybe not make them crave sex more, but definitely support their energy and drive and fertility. So yeah, good for respiratory support too. I know a number of asthma people who really do well with both reishi and cordyceps, right? Reishi to calm down the lungs and the overwhelm, cordyceps to give more bronchial dilation and increased oxygen flow into the cells. So that's a great classic remedy that was passed down from Chinese medicine. Reishi cordyceps, big time, has been a big thing throughout Asia as one of those things to also deal with just like shallow breathing and cardiovascular kind of shortness of breath. That's a great one. Okay, the other thing that we're going to see with cordyceps that I think is neat is that this isn't really just a mushroom. This is a whole fungal network of multiple types of DNA that are inside of cordyceps that eat insects or eat like bugs and spiders and all kinds of arachnids, ants, you name it. So it's got a really unique place on the planet as this really functional, smart adaptogen to the insect world. And because it has multiple different types of DNA, we're seeing all kinds of variety in the chemistry that cordyceps can produce. So I really think there's a lot more to the future of cordyceps in really tweaking the types of substrate that this mushroom grows on in order to enhance its healing benefits even more. Now we're already working with a very specific and uniquely studied substrate that creates a certain amount of high functioning active compounds, but I think that can be done even further. One of the people at the medicinal mushroom conference I went to in China was really sharing a case study on growing out cordyceps using different dungs and different types of manure in their cordyceps, like substrates, and being able to grow out all kinds of different chemistry that looked like it supported those animals. So there's a thought that potentially down the road one day we'll be able to send in a human fecal sample and have a cordyceps grown that works with our specific microbiome to support our specific health. Now, I know that seems a bit sci-fi, but it's interesting to me to think about the semi-biohacking side of like, we could really tweak these substrates even more to have more case specific. So yeah, there are a bunch of different ways you could take mushrooms. What we offer at Harmonic Arts is a tincture, a capsule, and a powder. They're all the exact same product. They just have different ways of working with them. So really, I'm going to try and get over to the side. You can see this. The tinctures are really just convenient and easy to use. I tend to love working with tinctures when I'm like, I take a reishi tincture on the airplane with me all the time. I know you're supposed to put it in those little bags, but I always take it out while I'm on the plane, and I drink reishi tincture like 6 or 7 times on a long flight because it's kind of grounding. Or if I'm going into social situations, I might have it in my car and just have a good 2 shots of reishi before I go to a party or a dinner or a get together. So I like it really haphazardly that way for me. If I'm feeling really in a public way, and I'm a post-COVID, leave me in my home and don't make me go out and be socially awkward, which happens at times. But the reality is it's just really grounding, I find, this mushroom, and really brings me back into my body in a more profound way. So I like the tincture that way. I also like the tincture for putting into drinks and putting it into different kinds of smoothies and things like that. But that's also where the powder over here can be. Capsules are really for the person on the go, really easy to take. 2 capsules a day, bam, no problem. If you're somebody who already takes capsules, this is the most convenient by far. A lot of people asked us to make capsules, even though we didn't do capsules originally, because that's how they work with this type of medicine. And we've seen that, yeah, there's a lot of people who want to work with our mushrooms because they know the high quality sourcing and they're in integrity with the best ingredients, and yet they are a capsule person. And so they're like making their own capsules. They're like, nope, please let us buy capsules from you. Lastly, the powder, which I would say is somewhere over there, is my favorite. I shouldn't have bias, but I like the powder because you taste it and it's really the best bang for your buck, aka you get more actual mushroom because it's bulk powder form in a jar, 45 grams in the jar. There's more in the jar than in the capsules. Even though the jar is a little bit cheaper, or they're about the same price. So it's definitely a good deal. And I really love putting mushrooms in my coffee, in my tea, in my smoothie, in oatmeal, even in pancake recipes. I've definitely made like syrups with them. I've added them to like honeys, put them in, kind of make a nice like chaga syrup is one we sell at Harmonic Arts. And that was just out of me making my own chaga syrup over a period of time. What we find the powders to be good at is easily putting into other foods in that sense. So yeah, or making an instant tea. Although reishi doesn't taste as good as something like chaga, so as just a reishi tea, you might find it a bit strong. You're probably better doing the 5 mushroom as a tea versus just reishi for flavor that way. Okay, so yeah, really, which one's best for you? It's whichever one is going to be the most convenient. So just finding the right and fit for your need. All right. And that's it for my like slideshow presentation tonight, guys. Appreciating you all for joining that. I'm going to take some Q&A. We're going to do a little chat. I'd love to hear from you too about like, have you worked with medicinal mushrooms? Do you have any questions around some of the different types of mushrooms, maybe one we didn't talk about, or formats, or benefits, or can they help you with different things? We have lots of education and recipes and webinars on our website at harmonicarts.ca. You can also follow me on YouTube under the Herbal Jedi. That's my Instagram and YouTube handle. I have been taking a bit of a Shavasana, a sabbatical period the last little while, but I am going to be doing a lot more video and content in the next bit coming up, because I'm feeling this need to really deepen this connection again to support people, but just really recognizing that some of the best ways we can start to support you as someone looking to work with mushrooms is through building out a webinar base and recipes on our website at harmonicarts.ca. So if you go to the webinar button, you'll see a lot of content there around this, including this webinar. This webinar will actually be hosted there in that webinar section at Harmonic Arts. So you could watch it again or check out any of the slides if you want to write down information you didn't get, or just tune in and get another view. Lastly, because you've joined us here, I do want to just make sure that you are aware that Harmonic Arts have the mushroom sale on right now. All of our mushroom products are 15% off. And just because you came to this webinar, you can get a free chaga tincture. No purchase necessary. Just grab a free chaga tincture. Use the code WEBINARCT as chaga tincture. So webinar CT this week and this week only, in order to get your free chaga tincture. But I highly recommend, if you are going to work with mushrooms, now being one of the best times to start to work with our mushrooms. And 7 out of 10 people, I usually suggest work with the 5 mushroom blend. So that would be my suggestion of the product to get, is 5 mushroom. And then if you are going to want to work with, say, lion's mane to support brain cognitive health, my usual suggestion is that you go 1/4 teaspoon of 5 mushroom and 1/4 teaspoon of lion's mane together. And that way you're getting a bit of the functional benefits of all 5 mushrooms, but more of the lion's mane. Or same thing with reishi. If you wanted to work with grounding and anxiety and tension, maybe reishi, 1 part reishi, 1 part 5 mushroom blend is a good way to really optimize getting the benefit of one individual mushroom while still getting a lot from each. That's how I like to work with them. And so I will basically stop my screen share and just kind of tune in and give you guys a little more Q&A time. And I'm not sure if Amanda is here and if she wants to ask any of the Q&A, or we'll just chat a bit more about mushrooms.
Hi, Yarrow, Amanda here. There are a couple questions that we'd love to share. What would you recommend for sleep?
Yeah, so reishi's not going to make you drowsy, but it is going to calm that insomnia monkey mind, right? So that's really what I would recommend. If you have that kind of like, you can't shut off and you are circular thinking, that would be what I would recommend. Otherwise, we make a tincture at Harmonic Arts called Feel Calm, and that's more of a nervine formula that calms down the nervous system and has a little bit of valerian that will actually help you go to sleep as well. So I might do a kind of an evening elixir with reishi and maybe ashwagandha and a bit of Feel Calm in one of our relaxing tea blend, and make that kind of drink with a bit of maybe nut milk and make that an evening drink. But yeah, reishi would be part of that, and that'd be the mushroom of choice for sure.
Another question that we have is, can you talk more about 5 mushroom?
Yeah, like the 5 mushroom blend, I'm assuming.
Yes, the 5 mushroom blend.
Yeah, so it's equal parts of each of the mushrooms in it. Much of the science has shown that multiple mushroom blends are more effective for like the larger scale immunomodulating properties. And because all of them have a little bit of a different effect on working as a prebiotic in the gut, I also am led to the conclusion that as a prebiotic, probably the 5 mushroom is better than just the turkey tail on its own, to get a little more grounding and anti-inflammatory effect, but also just really support more biodiversity. It's true that in every ecosystem, complex stability and biodiversity is what makes ecosystems thrive and function better. I feel this is similar to good quality formulas when it comes to herbal medicine. Having the right kind of formula is far more effective than one single herb for most people, because it really works as a village or a group working on this phenomenon versus an individual. And so I'd say that same thing is true with 5 mushroom, that most people I'm suggesting work with 5 mushroom blend because, well, some of the studies have shown that it is more effective for things like cancer and immune support. And it just makes sense that we're going to want a bit of those qualities of all of them. The other thing maybe I'll say about 5-mushroom is that you aren't getting as much of each individual mushroom. So just understanding that you could take a little more of the 5-mushroom, and that would be fine as well. I'll leave it there.
Great, thanks for that. Another question is, do you think mushrooms grown in the wild have more benefits than those grown in a lab?
I mean, without a doubt, like there's a mixture of things. There's a couple things to consider here. First off is that when we go out into the wild forest, the mushroom has to, or the mycelium anyway, has to compete with all kinds of competitor fungi, bacteria, viruses, all kinds of pathogens that are potentially in that soil. And the stresses on it make it more bioactive. So you not only pick up the spirit energy of like forest and connected to like intact ecosystem, you also gain a lot of the like challenging life situations that the mushroom has had to go through. At the same time, on the flip side, if it's say like a gene strain that was captured out of the wild but grown in a lab, you're still going to maintain a lot of the ancient wisdom, the lineage of knowledge that mushroom has grown. So there's nothing wrong with that lab grown reishi, for example. But if it doesn't have the right substrate, it won't have to produce those same compounds. So you're better to kind of have a mix, because the truth about wild grown mushrooms is, one, there's usually not a sustainable enough kind of amount of them to do this in any level of scale. If you want to make your own mushroom decoctions, yeah, pick a polypore from the forest and start to work with it. That's great. I've done that. I love that. It's a way of me being part of the medicine because I'm connecting with it. But if you want consistency and regular use of something over a period of time, you're probably far better to get a mushroom that can be lab tested and produced with accuracy and with, I guess, lack of pathogenic compounds in it. So in an example of like the cordyceps lab grown, we probably end up with a better cordyceps lab grown because it has specific bioactive substrate that we know is going to increase the active compounds, and it's going to be consistent all the time, or at least enough that we can rely on that medicine. Whereas wild medicines, I mean, I love them, and I'm a big fan of like harvesting a wild reishi in our part of the world, or connecting in with some other wild mushrooms, but that's in small scale to make a connection with that medicine and to craft that for myself. I think that's amazing. It's definitely not consistent though. So I don't know. Hopefully that answers. It's maybe a bit of an existential question. Definitely, I would first and foremost connect with wild mushrooms. But when it comes to supplementation, we may want to work with something that has, I guess, been strategized to optimize its bioactive chemistry and be consistent.
Next question, when making a tea using the concentrated mushroom powders, what dose would you use?
Great question. So I think a 1/4 teaspoon is about enough for a cup, like a 250 ml cup. But I would taste that. For me, I'd probably be putting in at least a 1/2 teaspoon. I feel like that would be more where I would go. And I usually don't drink 250 mils. Usually I'm making a cup like this is around 350 mils. So I might put like, yeah, even not, yeah, but a 1/2 teaspoon in a cup like this to fill it up. So yeah, that would be the way I would work with them that way. You could also do the same in a smoothie or in a coffee. I see a lot of people put them in coffee these days. My suggestion, there are other companies that do like a mushroom coffee. You can buy a coffee mushroom product with instant coffee, but I really suggest you make a high quality coffee and then put in a 1/4 teaspoon into each cup for that. Or if you have a friend who only drinks Tim Hortons, well, put a 1/4 teaspoon of mushrooms in their double. Make it a double triple.
Next question is, are mushrooms safe for pregnancy?
That's a great question too. And there's been a lot of women who have used mushrooms throughout their pregnancy. Now, notice how I said that. I can't say to you, yeah, no problem, totally safe, because the reality is I'm not authorized to say that. I can say anecdotally, though, that a lot of people have used them quite safely as an alternative when they're getting sick. So rather than work with golden seal or a lot of other herbs that are maybe counterindicated during pregnancy, mushrooms are what most pregnant women turn to for their immune support. If you're concerned, and it's not just a blanket good for pregnancy or not, understanding that pregnancy is far more than just a one state on, one state off. There's obviously 3 trimesters, and there's a whole process there. In the first trimester is when any kind of herb or things like that might potentially cause a miscarriage. Really just being way more cognizant and careful during that first trimester. But a lot of women have relied on chaga tea throughout their entire pregnancy. I just would be a little more cautious to not put anything in unnecessary during the first trimester until baby's really sitting with mama, and that's really a connected spirit and ready to come forward into the world. And then that's when, yeah, functional mushrooms are one of the best supportive ways people can work with their immune system during that part of their life.
Next question is, I would like to feed mushrooms to my horses. Would you consider making larger size portions for feeding horses?
Yeah, I mean, like a pound is already really expensive of these. You don't need that much. Your horse, so think about it as a biomass. Like they don't need, it's not like if like they would need as much. If your horse weighs 3 times the size of the amount of you, they could use 3 times the amount of mushrooms that you might take. So yeah, um, my recommendation is get the biggest size, and that should last a horse a good amount of time. Like our human dosage is around like max out around a gram, but even half a gram of our mushroom powders is really a therapeutic dose. But let's just say you maxed out a human dose at a gram, and you gave a horse 3 grams. Between a 100-gram jar of ours, that's 33 days worth of eating mushrooms consistently. And my recommendation would probably be in general that you don't feed anybody anything every single day all the time. It's much better to do like 5 days a week, 2 days off. Even though you can totally take mushrooms full time. But yeah, that would be my suggestion for a horse is potentially 1 to 2 grams is probably enough, maybe 3 grams at the most, to really get that immunomodulating property from the mushrooms. And that'd be daily.
Another question here is, other mushroom companies are showing some studies to show the great benefits of mycelium. Would you consider incorporating mycelium eventually?
Yeah, well, I've seen lion's mane to see a lot more studies on mycelium. Other than lion's mane, and I guess I saw Paul Stamets send me some articles on agarikon and some of the studies they've been doing on the agarikon mycelium. I really have not gained enough confidence and evidence that the mycelium have the health benefits that we're looking for. There's definitely immunomodulating properties, and I'm a big fan of what some of these mushroom companies are trying to do. It's just a matter of, yeah, that's a big piece of where we've come from. So yeah, lion's mane, I would definitely consider incorporating the mycelium down the road, because there is some benefits to the lion's mane mycelium that I've seen, but chaga and reishi, no way, at this point. And same with cordyceps for sure. And turkey tail, like it's very obvious that there are a ton of polyphenols in the turkey tail fruiting bodies that are just not in the mycelium. And chaga has over 200 bioactive nutrients, including like quercetin and SOD and betulinic acid and all these other ergosterols and terpene compounds that you really see in the black outer layer of the chaga and in the inner part of the chaga, but you don't see those same active compounds in the mycelium. So I wouldn't consider that. Yeah, I think lion's mane might be the only one I would consider potentially working with mycelium again on.
When you speak to lion's mane specifically with mycelium, what does the mycelium offer over the fruiting body?
Yeah, so there's I think they're called haricinones and arenosines, right, in the fruiting body and the mycelium. So the haricinones, I think it's the haricinones. Um, yeah, those are, let me just get this straight. The haricinones are only found in the fruiting body. That's right. And it's the arenosines that we find in the mycelium underground. And really, this is the same type of diterpene. So it's not a triterpene like in reishi and chaga. It's more of a diterpene. And this active compound is kind of converted as it becomes a fruiting body. But there's been studies now showing that the arenosines that are in, yeah, sorry, yeah, I think it's called arenosine. Sorry, I might be pronouncing it wrong. Anyway, that those compounds are are active in the mycelium as well as the fruiting body. And so to me, that's like, yeah, there's some benefit to that. And we're starting to see that. The challenge I would say more with mycelium then is going to be more about making sure that the mycelium has been properly extracted from the grain, because one of the challenges, a lot of mycelium has still got a lot of grain in it. And so it's not even full on mushroom. It's like partially digested mushroom mycelium grain product. So I would want to make sure if we worked with the mycelium there, that we're getting a fully dehydrated, starched proper product, because a lot of the glucan compounds that are found in mycelium are actually also found in grains. So some of the what's considered active chemistry in the mycelium may actually be chemistry from the grain. So that's something I would be concerned about, and I am already in the industry in general. So I'm a little more skeptical, and I want to do real good due diligence to make sure that it is actually got bioactive markers of those compounds before pursuing working with mycelium. So that would be what I would see. The mycelium is shown to have, in some of the studies that I've read anyway, really good qualities of supporting the gut biome layer at that level and supporting nerve regeneration in the gut. So I think there's a lot of benefit to that.
Thank you, Yarrow. Another question here regarding the safety of mushrooms for children, and what would you recommend?
Yeah, I usually don't recommend anyone under 2 is really what it comes down to. And I would recommend you follow the body mass index kind of sliding scale of, hey, if this person is a quarter my size, they should take a quarter the dose, you know? So really follow that a little more intuitively of like, what's an adult dose? Now mushrooms are definitely safe. I don't want to like preface that with like there's a danger of a child taking an adult dose, because I've seen lots of kids work with mushrooms, including mine, over the years and taken a full-size dose. I mean, my kids are now teenagers, but when they were younger, we totally gave them a good amount of mushrooms. Reishi was my son's like best friend as he had anxiety and insomnia as he was younger, the reishi tincture, and we let him dose it accordingly, which was sometimes like 3, 4 droppers full of reishi tincture in a night. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that was when he was like 6 or so. So maybe 7. I do recommend not under 2, but they're really safe. Like they're really safe for kids. Typically, it's more about like with reishi, it's about the flavor. My son was unique and he totally loves the flavor of bitter, which is not what everybody else likes. But it does kind of taste like medicine. And so sometimes kids will totally take it. Otherwise, make a little reishi syrup. That's a great way to get it down.
Okay, great. Last question is from one customer who's on the East Coast in Montreal and are wanting to go pick some mushrooms. And if you have any idea what would she would be able or he would be able to find.
Yeah, well, first off, before I answer that question, I want to say it's really seasonal right now. Like here where we are on the West Coast, we had biblical rains, torrential just came down, and then the last couple of days of like some warm weather, and the mycelium is just underground running and fruiting up like crazy right now. I've seen lots of great mushroom patches in the last week out here, and I'm not sure what the weather is like there, but that's what you want to look for, is a good amount of rain, and then a few days, maybe a week after the rain, where it's been warm and the mycelium will just run. And so you want to kind of use your mushroom picking time as like, when is, if everything is out, like you're seeing mushrooms in the field at school or in the park, or other places in your neighbor's yard, and you're like, okay, it's mushroom season. That's what you kind of first need to get. Is it really mushroom season? Because if it's not really a mushroom season, you might go out and not find anything. But yeah, there's loads of chanterelles in some of those forests. I've seen, when I was in on Quebec, we had a good amount of boletes out in eastern Canada. You have birch trees, which means you have bolete, birch boletes, and I think there's the scabbard red-topped bolete there too. That's a very tasty mushroom as a bolete. Get to know those mushrooms. There are some foolers, so be really careful that you know what that is. But yeah, there's a lot of really classic mushrooms that are edible and yummy out there. So yeah, I would, but I'd really want to look for the season. I feel like there's puffballs out there, things like shaggy mane, but those don't last very long. You might find the odd kind of cauliflower type mushroom, but yeah, there's a lot of mushrooms out there. Biggest recommendation that I have for people who are amateur novice mushroom foragers is, there's going to be so many mushrooms when it's season, and you're going to be like overwhelmed of like 100 different types of mushrooms. 90% of those aren't edible, but a lot of them aren't like hyper poisonous, going to kill you. So you don't need to have this massive phobia. Just don't eat any of them. What you want to get to know is 3 to 4. So start each year with learning 2 to 3 mushrooms. Just learn 2 to 3. And even if you pass by some good edibles and you missed out last year because you didn't know those ones, get to know 2 or 3, get curious. Over the course of 5 years, you'll know a dozen, 10 to a dozen mushrooms, and you'll be very savvy at understanding the ecosystems they grow in. They're very easy to forage once you know. So that's just my recommendation, is keep scratching that itch. I'm in a place now with mushroom foraging where I can tell almost instantly where a forest is going to be. Like I said, when I was in Ontario, I'm like, I know exactly where to go find reishi right now in the middle of Toronto. And that's just because I'm following the natural geography of the land and looking for places where those big trees grow. Mushroom foraging is all about the trees that they build relationships with. So that would be my recommendation. Get some books, spend some time, get curious, get fungal curious, and go out and have fun. But just don't eat anything. That's all. If you really aren't sure what it is, and you got a mushroom book and it's not telling you what it is, take pictures of the bottom, take pictures of the top, take pictures of the ecosystem, notice what trees are growing around it, what kind of ecosystem it is, and then go onto one of the mushroom forums and ask questions. But unless you have all the right data for those people who are really do know, you won't get the right answer. So make sure you know the top, the bottom, got good quality pictures of the spore pad, of the top, of the ecosystem, and you understand, what trees are in the area. And then, people will help you identify it online. Okay, that's enough about that. I really do hope you guys have a mushroom foraging season. And I think even if you want to work with functional mushrooms as medicine, it's so important to get out into the natural world and tune in with the wild frequency of the wood wide web. This is where the intelligence of our planet is based. This is what a lot of our planet is conspiring to go back to forests, to build this complex stability through biodiversity and relationships between the fungal networks and the trees and the ecosystems. Every plant has a mycorrhizal connection, and mushrooms are just one of the more intelligent ways that our planet builds its immune system. So we can work with them as medicine, but another part of that medicine is just get out into the ecosystems where mushrooms thrive. So I hope that for you this season, and maybe get out and forage a few mushrooms, or at least work with them for your immunological health.